Now, my next question, Doctor, which is related to Prof, is in part of the mental health and all that we are talking about, smartphone and all that. Now, as you know, a lot of things, there's a lot of bombardment that's coming our way, the society, the comparison, which is more predominant now compared to before, because we're more exposed and we have lesser channels to express ourselves. Last time I remember, when you have an issue like, your mom will always have the conversation in the kitchen. While chopping vegetables and making some curry, there's a conversation. That's mumbawang, right? So they're having this conversation. There's a place to let go. I practice that. I like to cook. So whenever I see there's some issues with the kids, I'll say, come, let's go and cook. So I'll teach them certain dish during the conversation time. We'll start with the conversation. By the time we finish the cooking, everything is sorted out. So there's no place now because everyone using instant stuff. There's microwave, everything you press a switch, it's gone. So there's no time. And when you have time, people are with their, I call it their smartphones and all that stuff. So I call it massive, it takes away a massive weapon of distraction. I call it distraction. Okay, mass weapon of distraction, because it's taking our attention away. So with all these things happening, Prof, so what's happening is that the stress level is going up, maybe the depression is going up, anxiety is going up. Now, compared to all these issues that's taking place, there's also people with chemical imbalance, which we need to respect. They need to go and get help. And also listening to and reading to books and all that, and also experiencing to myself, I also realized that there are more cases on self-inflicted, where continuous programming of negativity stuff, continuous anxiousness, continuous thinking of comparing, making me to depression. So there's basically this self-inflicted stuff that's also happening. So I want to know, Prof, have you seen that trend? At the same time, how does the hormones work here? Because we are basically, I call myself, I'm the CEO of this chemical plant. I need to run this chemical plant well, because there's certain sets of hormones which basically trigger certain things, right? Before the conversation started, we were talking about thoughts, which are many. We process around 70 to 90,000 thoughts per day. Thoughts, we don't work on all the thoughts. We only work on the thoughts that they're thinking, meaning the one that they're focusing on becomes thinking. We spend more time. Now that one becomes energy related, called emotion. Emotion now creates that chemical reaction. Now we have this feeling, and then bang, the skeletal system and all that stuff, and then we get result, because now we're actually doing something. Either we're beating the fella or hugging the fella, right? So whatever it is, the consequence comes to us. So I want to know from you, in your experience, how you're seeing the trajectory, how is it going? Are you seeing more and more people are self-inflicting themselves with the bombardment of stuff, and how the hormones are playing, and perhaps how we can undo this? What are the things that we can do? Sports, definitely, I'm a fan of sports. So please share with this what we're talking about, Prof, because I think the listeners would love to hear this. Thank you.
Okay. So we are talking about stress. There is a lot of models out there for us to understand how stress occurs and how it affects people. So one of the widely used model is general adaptation syndromes model for stress. So according to this model, there are 3 stages of stress. The first one is alarm. Second one is adaptations, and the third one is exhaustions. So basically what happens, from our surrounding, we receive a lot of stimulus. So our senses take those stimulus, and when it comes to attend to some of those, that comes to our minds. So we sense and we attend to. So for example, at the moment, there are a lot of light, noise from different sensories, and basically we don't pay attention to most of it, but we pay attention to some. Okay, So those that we pay attention to depends because, for example, the same stimulus or same event experienced by two people can be interpreted differently. Can be interpreted differently. So these interpretations comes under the perceptual systems of an individual. So we have sensory and then we have perceptions. So under the perceptions is where we interpret stimulus. So events that happen around us, things that happens in our daily lives are interpreted differently. So this comes back to our earlier points on individuals' personality, on how they interpret things. And I would like to highlight one of your points that the mind is where everything starts. Because from there, different interpretations will affect people differently. For example, promotions, which is good things. But if you take it as expectations that you need to perform even higher and even higher, that will create a lot of stress. Take these sessions, for example. Now it is, informal conversations in a casual manner. But if I were to think that, it is recorded, I may say something which is, wrong. It will create a lot of stress for me. But, I can think that way, or I can think another way. And it's the same stimulus, but create different things. So from this process, we comes to the adaptations, where some people adapt well, but some others do not. And this is where we comes, mental health practitioners, wellness practitioners, counselors, psychologists, where we provide strategies for people to cope with the stresses. Some of them coping well, some of them do not cope well. So those that do not cope well will enter into the third stage of exhaustions, where the possibility of severe or chronic stress and possibility of suffering from mental illnesses, psychological disorders will be there. About the hormones, in some researchers are focusing on what hormone does to the body and whether it affects the way we experience things. But for me personally, I think that it's a response to the way we think. It's a response to the way we think. For example, if we think that an event is a stressful event, so a stimulus is a stressful stimulus, then our body will be flooded with epinephrine, norepinephrines, and as well as cortisols. And if we think that what we did or what we are facing is a good thing in a positive manner, then it will be flooded with dopamine, for example. So depending on how we think, body will respond to it physiologically as well as physically. And of course, these neurotransmitters and hormones, they regulates our body. Regulates our body. For example, the epinephrine and norepinephrine help us to prepare for the fight or flight response, whether we fight or we flight. And once the event has ceased or event has disappeared, then it will return to normal. In fact, same goes to exercise, because all this while we hear that exercise is good. But if we look from hormonal response perspective, for those who are not habituated to exercise, the moment they start to exercise, their body will be flooded with these hormones, because it's considered a stressor, some things that they are not used to.
Yeah.
But as they adapt to it, as they habituated, then the changes in the patterns of hormonal secretions will occur. Wow. Then you will feel good about doing exercise. But tell those the people who are sedentary, who are not used to exercise, then they probably will think that exercise is a stress in itself.
Yeah.
It's not something that is relaxing. But once they adapt to it, then the body will respond differently. It will, it will produce happy hormones, as opposed to
Yeah.
the stress hormones.
It's
So
exactly like when you're looking at the food, you're saying that, I'm going on a diet, but you love the food. And you're so
yes,
stressful, you're like, tapalah,
yes,
But
yes,
that might as well eat the food, right? Because you
yes,
have epinephrine, norepinephrine,
yes.
cortisol in your blood. Yeah, I understand. Go ahead, Prof.
So that's why I think the first things in this stress experience is how we interpret the stimulus. So it's
Mm-hmm.
started in the mind, and in
Mm,
fact, how we think basically will manifest itself,
mm,
whether physiologically, in fact, uh, in terms of behavior and body languages as well. So if we think that, if we thoughts about confidence, lacking those that lack self-confidence, for example, having to speak to the public, then a lot of issues going on in their mind, being
yes.
anxious, fear of social evaluations, these people, what people may think of themselves and other things. And with these thoughts, they will manifest itself in how they carry themselves, probably a bit slouching and try
Yep.
to hide themselves.
Yep.
But if they think as a challenge or something that they enjoy, still the same stimulus, still the same public speakings,
Yep.
they will manifest themselves in different ways. That's why
Wow.
during my talk with athletes, usually, I try to sell the ideas that, whatever it is, it starts with their minds, how they
Mm,
think, what they are facing. So thinking positive as opposed to the negative.
wow.
The body will respond accordingly, hormonal wise, physiological wise, and other responses to what we think. So interpretations of a stimulus, how we think, I think is a starting point in many things. In the stress
Wow.
experience, if we think differently, then that stimulus may not be stressful to us. It's
Wow.
probably some things that, I don't know, enjoyable.
Wow. I like what you said, Prof. Amazing. So everyone will have an alarm because it's a stimuli from outside. We are all subjected to a stimulus that's happening. So it is alarm for us. The thing is, how do we adapt to it is the most
Yeah.
important thing,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So that is the very reason why we're having this series of conversation, Prof. Because
Definitely.
adaptability, because it could be a technique the person is using, it could be
Mm-hmm.
a tool the person is using,
Yeah.
or it could be any kind of things that they can use in order to come out with tools, techniques,
Mm.
talents. It could be a talent. Some of them just sing. They can
Yeah.
just sing their way out. So failure to that is where you are mentioning we go into exhaustion.
Yes.
And if after exhaustion, if it's not taken care, is when things will go south in the sense,
Mm-hmm.
we tend to go into that roller coaster and will lead to something else.
Yes. Yes.
So